Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome back. We're doing another Hosea study today, and so we should be moving right along through this. Moving right along through this. I suppose. I suppose we'll try to get Hosea notes done today, and work on whoever comes next time. Micah, I reckon. And then we'll hang on. Actually, what am I even talking about? It shouldn't be Micah, should it? Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah. Maybe it is Micah. Maybe I'm backwards. Let me look here. Hosea, Amos, Micah. Yeah, it is Micah next. What am I thinking? Yep. So we're going to do Hosea today, and then we'll do Micah the next time. Sound good? Sounds good to me. All right, so we have here our outlines already being made. We have the Minor Prophet syllabus. We have a Hosea outline and an Amos outline. Let's open up the Amos outline just to kind of remind ourselves of what we did. Yeah, we filled it out. Oh yeah, we filled it out really well, actually. This is gonna be good. Okay, we're gonna leave this open then for future reference, and our job is to fill this in for today. So we're just gonna go through our notes, and anything that we come across that seems to fit this kind of stuff, we're going to put into our handy dandy notebook. And like yesterday, we're going to be reading From Judgment to Hope, a study on the prophets by Walter Brueggemann. And then we'll move over to Introduction to the Prophets by this other fella who we don't remember the name of, Paul Reddit. There we go. So let's move through it. Hosea belongs to the same cultural historical context of northern Israel as does Amos. Already, we've got ourselves a good note. He reports that his passion for prophetic utterance has grown out of his anguished personal experience of a vexed and scandalous marriage. Out of that personal disaster, Hosea is able to speak about the alienation that is coming between Yahweh and Israel, a breakup that'll end in suffering, displacement, and wretchedness. Those are three seem like important words for us to remember. The exact linkage between the personal and the prophetic is a bit elusive, but it is not doubted that this poet is propelled, like every poet, out of his lived reality. It is evident that Hosea arose from the covenantal circles of Deuteronomy that were deeply committed to the Sinai covenant with its rigorous commandments and its inescapable sanctions of blessings and curse. This is important here. In other words, what he's saying is the whole theme of Hosea is rooted in the Deuteronomy 32 worldview. Now, I know Dr. Michael Heiser uses that term, which is why I used it here, but I don't mean angels and demons and all that kind of stuff. What I mean is the law, blessings, and cursings, the Song of Moses, is at the back of Hosea's mind as he's witnessing the catastrophe of Israel unfold. Indeed, in 4:2, Hosea specifically cites the commandments of Sinai: swearing, lying, murder, stealing, adultery, breakout, bloodshed follows bloodshed. So we have swearing, lying, murder. That would be commandment number 3, commandment number 9, commandment number 6. Stealing is 8. Adultery is 7, which means we're missing 5. We're missing 1 and 2, graven images, no other gods before me. We're missing covetousness. We're missing honor your father and mother. And we're missing, what else are we missing there? Let's see. Oh, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. The best known text of Hosea in Christian usage is Hosea 6, verse 6. So we need to go ahead and put that into key passages. In fact, what we ought to do is go back up here and get this passage here about personal experience and copy that into major and minor themes. Again, these might just be the worst categories in the world, but we don't care because we're just trying to collect information, right? So his audience is Israel. This is pre-exilic, and the date of composition we can put that there. All right, sweet. Let's keep going. As we've seen in Amos 5:21 to 23, this prophet also looks askance. Okay. Let's look. Askance. To look at or think about something without doubt, with doubt, disapproval, or no choice or no trust. Huh. Who would have thunk? Learned a new word. Okay, at worship practices that function in Israel, as they often do, to legitimate worship as a substitute for covenantal activity. Okay, he looks with doubt, with frustration at worship practices that function in Israel, as they often do, to legitimate worship as a substitute for covenantal activity. That seems like something to put in the major themes section, doesn't it? The pairing of steadfast love and knowledge of God refers to covenantal practices. And the tradition of Deuteronomy, these covenantal practices pertain to neighborly generosity and solidarity with a special regard for the poor, widows, orphans, and immigrants. See Deuteronomy 14:28. Every third year, you bring out the full tithe of your produce for that year and store it within your towns. And then 24, when you reap your harvest in your field, yeah, don't go back and basically leave the corners. Got it. Thus, Hosea links the reality of Yahweh, the Lord of the covenant, to the concern for the neighborhood. These are the people in the neighborhood. In the neighborhood. We got some Mr. Rogers themes in Hosea. Beyond that, the oracle of Hosea 4:1 through 3 claims that violation of covenantal command will disrupt creation. Let's go ahead and grab this and put it into our notebook as well. Hear the word of the Lord, O people of Israel, for the Lord has an indictment against the inhabitants of the land. There is no faithfulness or loyalty and no knowledge of God in the land. Swearing, lying, and murder and stealing and adultery break out. Bloodshed follows bloodshed. Therefore the land mourns, and all who live in it languish. Together with the wild animals and the birds of the air, even the fish of the sea are perishing, says Hosea. So we have, again, a link to covenantal blessings and cursings, and that is something that we can put in our notebook. Okay, in verse 2, Hosea uses a version of the pairing in 6:6, the pairing twice quoted by Jesus, loyalty and knowledge of God. He lists the offenses of Israel related to Sinai, swearing, lying, murder, stealing, committing adultery, but then remarkably, he dares to assert in verse 3 that such disregard for the covenant will cause a drought that will trouble creation, devastate populations of animals, birds, and fish. The violation of covenant leads to environmental chaos. Now, I can already imagine that some of you watching this will read this part about the land mourning and the wild animals and whatnot, and think back to Hosea chapter 1, I believe it is. Actually, it's chapter 2, where he says that he will make a new covenant. Let's see. Yeah, hang on, I'm looking for it. I'll make for you a covenant on that day with the wild animals, the birds of the air, the creeping things in the ground. I will abolish the bow, the sword, the war from the land, and I'll make you lie down in safety. And so they'd look at this passage about making a new covenant with the animals and the birds and the creeping things, which seems to be the same themes that are here. Wild animals, birds, fish of the sea. Let's go back and see if fish of the sea are mentioned in Hosea 2. No mention of that. But anyways, somebody would probably look at that and say this is instead covenantal language instead of necessarily the actual birds and animals and whatnot. But, that's not really all that important, I don't think, for our purposes right now. Okay, so that's Brueggemann's small section on Hosea, which, of course, he's going to bring out some more here that we'll read later after we finish the Micah. We'll circle back because, again, we're just building very rough outlines here. We're going to circle back and fill all this in even more in the future. So let's go look at Introduction to the Prophets, Hosea Starts on page 211, ends on page 247. Oh, wait, that's never mind. That's a different thing. 224. So we have 13 pages. That's not too bad. All right. Here we go. The motif of Israel is prostitute wife. It's characteristic of Hosea. Seems like something to add to our notebook. In fact, we can put that there probably in order to make it fit with this other thing. Anytime you can organize it, even if you're doing it haphazardly, it at least helps you in the long run. Hosea 1 and 3 relate salient details of the prophet's marriage. Chapter 2, however, the marriage exemplifies the relationship between God and Israel. Gomer becomes the cipher for Israel. Once Israel had stood in a unique relationship with Yahweh, but no more. Israel had begun dalliances with other lovers, Canaanite and Assyrian deities. God had every right, as Hosea portrays matters, to divorce her. So there we have the breaking of commandments 1 and 2. Okay, wait a minute. Here we go. So this means, okay. All right. Commandment 1 and 2 found in Hosea 2 regarding other gods. Commandment 3, we have swearing in chapter 4 and verse 2. Commandment 4 is the connection between Sabbath and care for the lower class, and by that I just mean widows and orphans in particular. You could include the aliens and whatnot in this as well. Let's see, Commandment 5, honor your father and mother. We don't have that yet. Commandment 6 is murder. That's in 4:2. Commandment 7 is adultery. That's in 4:2 as well. Commandment 8 is stealing. I'm guessing that's also in 4:2. I actually forgot. Let me go back and look. Yeah, stealing. And then commandment 9 is lying. That's also in 4 verse 2. And then commandment 10 is covetousness, and that is also unaccounted for as of yet. But I have a feeling that we'll find all these things. Neat. The images of the wrong husband expel any guilty wife. Within the collection, however, the image is reshaped in 2 ways. 4:14 says, I will not punish your daughters when they commit fornication, nor your daughters-in-law when they commit adultery. For the men go aside and offer sacrifices with temple prostitutes. Thus a people with no understanding will be thrust down. So it's not just the women, it's also the men that are involved in this as well. The point, obviously, is not that God would overlook harlotry or temple prostitution, but that sexual promiscuity was no worse than religious promiscuity, and the people practicing the latter would pay for their sins. Israel, the unfaithful wife, was receiving her final warning to repent. Still, Hosea portrays God as willing and ready to receive back the wayward people. I agree with the community notes on this. We'll go ahead and put that there, and then add this to our major and minor themes. All right. The place of the collection in the canon. In a canonical reading of the 12, the place is to begin is with Hosea. The scholars generally think that historically it followed Amos, and both the Masoretic and Septuagint. Hosea comes first. And the 12 dates seems to have been the primary, though not the only criterion. Since the date of the career of Amos is difficult to calculate, early redactors may well have thought that Amos was older. In any case, Hosea stands first in the 12, the setting for the collection. Determining the setting of the collection is more difficult than it might seem at first glance. One should start with the northern prophet Hosea himself, but the collection gives evidence of a long period of growth and a change in venue to Judah. Hosea addresses Israel, most often by the name Ephraim, its most important tribe, and some of its cities, denouncing worship in the temples in Gilgal and Bethel and Samaria, it is clear that Hosea flourished in Israel, and it is likely that his messages were first collected there. At some point, however, let's go ahead and mark that and put this up here in the historical circumstance. At some point, however, they underwent a southern or Judean redaction at a time when few allusions to Judah may have been included, though an occasional mention of Judah may have been original. We'll put this there as well, just in case. But like I mentioned before, I don't really have much concern for trying to nail down all of the textual criticism stuff that's found in the Minor Prophets. We're mainly given an overview, and I'm not a scholar anyway, so I'm not really equipped or qualified to handle any of those distinctions anyways. The collection must date no other than the career of the prophet himself. That date can be deduced approximately on internal evidence. For starters, I just love this quote. Hang on a second. The date can be deduced approximately on internal evidence. I want to go grab this quote and make it more important. Okay, that way, if I want to search for it later, I can always go back and get this, because this little quote here would be good in discussing Revelation. Determining the dating of Revelation based on internal evidence as opposed to external evidence is far more compelling to me, and probably to you, than just relying on external evidence. For starters, the collection opens with a superscription, which gives the days of the days of Hosea's work. For starters, the collection opens with a superscription that is followed by an incipit, suggesting that verse 1 was penned after the narrative in 1, 2 through 9. The superscription dates Hosea primarily during the reigns of the southern kings, and secondarily during the reign of King Jeroboam II. The best explanation for the emphasis on southern kings is that the superscription was written in the south for southern readers. In any case, Jeroboam died around 746, thus providing the latest possible date for the beginning of Hosea's ministry. Hezekiah came to the throne of Judah in 725 or 715, depending on whose dating scheme one follows. Other verses offer similar results. Hosea 7:7 and Hosea 8:4 reflect turbulent times like the years between 746 and 737, when Israel went through 6 kings and several dynasties. They crowned kings, but not from me. They set up princes, but I did not know them. Also, scholars suggest that 7:11 through 12 reflects the vacillations in foreign policy of Israel's final king, Hosea, and Hosea 10:3 perhaps reflects the period between the death of Hosea in 724 and the fall of Samaria in 722-721. The collection does not, however, actually mention the fall of Samaria and the northern kingdom. Man, we're getting all the information here, aren't we? Though this argument involves a conclusion from silence, shaky step logically. That's important, by the way. Scholars often conclude that Hosea's recorded ministry did not continue that late, since they didn't mention the fall of Samaria. Hence, we arrived at a tentative date of approximately the 3rd quarter of the 8th century for Hosea's ministry. And that's really what we're looking for in our research. Particularly, in light of the third-person account of Hosea's marriage, with which the collection opens, someone else seems to have been responsible for gathering and writing down the prophet's words. That person may have worked during or soon after the prophet's ministry. When Israel fell to the Assyrians, as Hosea predicted, some person or group probably decided that he was a prophet to be heard. Again, keep in mind, we're just collecting resources. We're not always endorsing what the resources say completely. Some verses, passages in the collection, however, appear to have risen about the time of the fall of Judah and the exile. So they're saying that these passages pertain more to the fall of Jerusalem than they do to the ministry of Hosea himself. But that's okay. We're not really worried about that kind of stuff, right? All right. All right, let's keep going. The structure, integrity, and authorship of the collection. Structurally, Hosea breaks between chapters 3 and 4, with chapters 1 to 3 dealing with the marriage of Hosea and chapters 4 to 14 further developing his message. Let's go ahead and copy this over and put this in here as an outline. I think we did this last time as well in our study of Amos. A shift in the image for Israel also occurs at this point. In chapters 1 to 3, Israel is portrayed as a wife. In chapters 4 to 14, Israel is mainly portrayed as a son. That's pretty interesting. We'll have to dive more into that. You know, that happens a lot in the New Testament as well. The church is referred to as the bride of Christ, but we're also seen as a son, or even I have thought before in Romans 7 we've been seen as a husband, but that's married to the law. But then, you know, that's something else. Okay, the collection may be outlined as follows. Let's see how we like the outline. Third person account of the marriage, the wife Israel and her husband, with the allegory explained in 2:2 to 2:23, and then first person account of the marriage. All right, and then we have the Son of God, Yahweh's indictment of Israel, and the priests, Yahweh's punishment of Judah, Yahweh's indictment of Israel, Yahweh's punishment of Israel, Yahweh's compassion for Israel, Yahweh's indictment of Israel, Yahweh's forgiveness of Israel. You know what? Let's just go ahead and copy this, because we can always give the outline, even if it's just a... Even if the outline is just for fun. Let's see. There we go. Oh, see, it copied all the letters and stuff. That's okay. We can fix this. You got to make your stuff neat. Neat and organized. Which we'll come back and fix all this in even more detail later. There we go. Now it's better. All right, let's keep going. I did like this quote, though. This arrangement moves twice from indictment to punishment to forgiveness. Indictment, punishment, compassion, indictment, forgiveness. Scholars sometimes say it also may be more or less chronological, but that seems less clear. In any case, critical scholars have contested the integrity of Hosea, though the prophet himself perhaps uttered many, maybe even most of the message. Okay, whatever. Main genres in the collection. Okay, this is what we need here. Hosea contains a variety of prophetic genres, more than we can mention here. Well, you could actually mention as many as you wanted to, is my personal opinion. In addition to the allegory in chapter 2 already discussed, the primary genres include autobiography and biography, trial speech, prophecy of disaster, and what we might call historical reflection. Let's just go ahead and pull this, put this here, genres. So we have allegory, autobiography, trial speech, prophecy of disaster, historical reflection. So now we just have to take away some of the commas and whatnot. There we go. The discussion of Hosea's marriage in chapter 3 was written in the first person singular, giving it the appearance of being autobiographical. The third person account in chapter 1 is biography. There seems to be no reason to deny this historicity of the reports, though scholars have sometimes called the entirety of chapters 1 through 3 allegory, since chapter 2 to 23 is. The use of the first person in 3:1 through 4 results in a greater sense of the prophet's personal pain, in contrast with the more matter-of-fact tone of chapter 1. I like that. The combination of the first two genres, autobiography and allegory, is accompanied by means of the transition passage 1:10 to 2:1. In the Hebrew Bible, 110 begins chapter 2, indicating that the persons who supplied these chapter breaks recognize the new direction. Verse 11, at least, if not verse 10 as well, looks like a later addition, and perhaps after both the fall of Israel and Judah and the experience of the exile. Okay. Chapter 2, verse 1 forms the actual transition to the allegory. The NRSV treats 2:16 through 20 as prose, suggesting that those verses might have constituted an addition. There is, however, no reason the original author cannot have combined prose and poetry. All right. The use of the term Baal, husband for God, is surprising, since Baal was also the name of the chief fertility god of Canaan. Let's mark that to come back to later. Idolatry, symbolized by adultery. The use of the word name Baal for Yahweh is at a minimum daring. The move from first person to third person is abrupt with no transition except for the word again in verse 1. The question is whether the woman Hosea finds in chapter 3 is Gomer. She's never identified by the name. Of course, it's been assumed that it's Gomer. Let's see. And the thrust of the whole collection leans that way. Just as Hosea took back Gomer, so Yahweh would take back Israel. The next genre is the familiar trial speech, modeled apparently on court proceedings. It appears in 4:1-1-2-3, 4:19, 5:1-7, 12-26. Okay. All right, let's copy that. And what we'll do is we'll stick that underneath this allegory in chapter 2, 3, 1, and then let's keep going. Okay, the explicit appeal to that is called a covenant lawsuit. I like that quote. So the explicit appeal to the Ten Commandments is called a covenant lawsuit. This is going back to the law of blessings and cursings. And so we're going to take that and put it under this. Okay. A similar genre employed in Hosea is the prophecy of disaster. Just go ahead and take these passages here. Put them under that heading since he gives us the specific references. Like the trial speech, the prophecy of disaster describes the wrongdoing or sins of the people and the punishment that will befall them. Characteristic of this genre is the messenger formula, thus says Yahweh, which, however, does not appear in Hosea. Typically, the transition between the two major sections, wrongdoing and punishment, is marked by the transition word therefore. The final genre requiring mention here is what has been termed a historical reflection, which appears most tellingly in Hosea 11, 1-11. So let's put that there. Sweet. In that chapter, Yahweh agonizes over the sinfulness of Israel, exhibited from the moment Israel set foot in Canaan and reaching its peak in the installation of the golden bull in the royal temple in Samaria. Eight, 4-5. Let me go put this here under the commandments. Hosea 8, 4-5. Gonna add that to the part about the Ten Commandments there. God called Israel out of Egypt at the time of the Exodus. The time of the wilderness was a time when God satisfied their needs. But at their last stop in the wilderness at Baal Peor, if not sooner, and then again as soon as they crossed the Jordan and set foot in Canaan, they indulged in sinning. Epitomized by the sordid events. Okay, let's see. All right. In Hosea 11:5, the mood turns abruptly. The prophet also begins to predict the future. Because of their sin, Israel would pay a price. They would not return to Egypt, whence God had called them. Rather, Assyria would be their king. Let's see. They were attempting to apply a political fix to a theological, moral problem, and it would not work. Well, there's a there's a quote for today, right? People attempting to apply a political fix to a theological, moral problem. Israel had sinned, earning repercussions that God would not turn away. Punish would not be God's final word, however. Beyond punishment lay restitution because God, unlike humans, would not destroy the people. Poetically, the prophet portrays Yahweh as a roaring lion whose piercing sound would reach from Jerusalem to Egypt and Assyria and call God's people home. Hey, that's very similar to the meaning behind the roaring lion in Joel as well. In fact, let's go ahead and do a word study. Just a word search on lion. And instead of all passages, we're going to look at the minor prophets and go. Hosea 5:14, I'll be like a lion to Ephraim, a young lion to the house of Judah. They should go after the Lord who roars like a lion. When he roars, his children shall come trembling from the west. Okay. And then we have the opposite way of using lion in 13:7 and 13:8. I'll devour them like a lion. Amos 3 verse 4. Again, we have the lion imagery there. Wait. Hang on a second. Let's look at something. The Lord roars. Ah, we need to look up roars as well. Can I duplicate this tab? Sweet. Okay. We're still Hosea, Joel, Amos. Okay, Amos or Joel should be right here, I believe. Hey, why is my chat not working? Let's see. All right, we need to look at the end of Joel. Let's see. For some reason, I thought it said roars. Ah, there it is. Roars. Oh. Ends in an S. Okay, here we go. Joel 3:16, Amos 1:2. Let's look at all these real quick. We're actually going to go ahead and collect all these passages into a document. Let's see. Save as passage list. A lion in minor prophets. I thought there was a way to save these passages to a passage list. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Save as passage list. We're going to call this roars in top Bibles, and then save as passage list, and this will be roar in top Bibles, and then we can come here and we can merge the lists together. Let's see. All right, and then we merge this one with roars union, and then we can do this, and we can just put lion in minor prophets and roars. All right, that's going to help us in the future. Let me go delete these other documents now. What this is going to help us do is put all these together. Delete. 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 And that just leaves us with one. And then we're going to take all these passages, copy them, go to our minor prophets document. We're just going to come to the bottom like so, and we're going to put a lion roars. And this one little detail right here is going to bring together a lot of texts. Let me go ahead and clean it up a little bit by taking away these duplicate lines. Yeah, this is going to bring together a lot of passages for us. Joe 1 verse 6. I like this a lot, actually. I love it whenever you can find thematic links between texts like this, because it really brings the whole thing together, and it shows like consistency between the different prophets. You could even use this to like link together some of the prophets. For example, most of these, the ones we just have been looking at, Hosea and Amos and Micah, they're going to be those pre-exilic prophets, and they're using this line imagery in two different ways, both in a salvific sense and also in a judgment sense. So it's really interesting. So we're just going to go ahead and save that and close out of that. And that's our first detour. All right, let's do something else. Okay, let's keep going. Special features of the collection. Let me go ahead and explain what we're doing here real quick, just so it makes sense. Here we have Joel 3:16. The Lord roars from Zion and utters his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and earth shake. But the Lord is a refuge for his people, a stronghold for the people of Israel. Amos 2, verse 2. The Lord roars from Zion and utters his voice from Jerusalem. The pastures of the shepherds wither, and the top of Carmel drives up. So you have roaring being a source of strength for his people, and roaring being a source of fear for the people. But then here in Hosea, Hosea 11, verse 10, like we were just looking at, they will go after the Lord, who roars like a lion when he roars. His children shall come trembling from the west. They shall come trembling like birds from Egypt, like doves from the land of Assyria, and I'll return them to their homes. So it's interesting how that same imagery is used in opposite ways throughout the minor prophets. So I'll take a look at that later. Okay, let's keep going. Commentators often note the poor condition of the text of Hosea and frequently assume that the text suffered in transmission. Not really worried about this. Compare translations of Hosea. Don't base your teaching on just one translation. Specifically comparing Hosea 11, 3-4, which say what? Yet it was I who taught Ephraim to walk. I took them up in my arms, but they did not know that I healed them. I led them with cords of human kindness, with bands of love. I was to them like those who lift infants to their cheeks. I bent down and fed them. Let's compare it in this. See. I led them cords with human kindness and with the bonds of love, with bands of love, with bonds of love, as one who lifts the yoke from their jaws. I was to them like those who lift infants to their cheeks. Oh, interesting. And I bent down and fed them. I bent down and fed them. Yeah, so you have interesting translation options here. But we're not really worried about that. A special feature of the collection is the use of other biblical passages in Hosea. Genesis 22:17 and Hosea 1:10. Okay, interesting. A reference to the creation of wild animals. Yeah, we've seen this. An allusion to the destruction of the cities of the plain. A summary of the story of Jacob. All right, interesting. References to the Exodus. An appeal to the Ten Commandments and references to Judges 19-21. The first two of these allusions appears in an allegory that is probably not from the hands of the prophet, blah, blah, blah. Okay, interesting. All right, now we're down to the introduction of the prophet. We are so close to being done with this Hosea study for today. And we're only 38 minutes in. That's not too bad. In contrast with the major prophets, whose collections often relate many events in the life of the prophet, the 12 typically says little about the prophets. In Hosea, only the opening, which dealt with Hosea's marriage, talks about him. Nevertheless, it is possible to say a little bit about him, and worth the effort to do so. The name Hosea means something like he has helped. So we're going to go ahead and grab that and put it in our... We'll just probably put it there. It appears to be a shortened for the southern name, Yahweh has helped. The superscription gives his father's name, which means my well. The detail of the prophet's life are little known, aside from the few details given about his marriage. His wife is named Gomer, a name that elsewhere refers to males. That's weird. Which makes sense if you watch Dukes of Hazzard. According to Hosea 1, she bears 3 children, though only the first is specifically said to be Hosea's. That's a detail that matters, but we're not too worried about that. The woman in Hosea 3 seems to have been bought at a negotiated price instead of the 30 shekels mentioned in Exodus 21:32, or the 50 for which slaves might redeem for themselves in 8th century Israel. If indeed Hosea could afford to buy a woman, he would not have been destitute, or he would not have been destitute. Hosea's public career may have lasted a quarter of a century. References to the various temples might suggest he had the means of travel. It is not clear in what capacity he spoke, if he belonged. Oh, we actually have a lot more to go. For some reason, I thought we were almost done. It is not clear in what capacity he spoke. If he belonged to an official cult, probably he would have been at odds with other priests and prophets for his sharp denunciation of them. The basic emphasis in Hosea. Space does not permit a verse-by-verse exegesis of Hosea any more than it does of the major prophets. It'll be necessary, therefore, to discuss Hosea's message in terms of his major themes. We will look at 6 before turning to the issue of the theological problems raised by a study of Hosea's message. So what we're going to do with this, just like we did with the other feller, is we're going to take these and we're going to say 6 major themes, and we're just going to copy and paste them. Idolatry idolatry and adultery, the passion of God. Whoops. Like priests and prophets like people. We're not worried about that. What all this means right now, we're just gonna get it down so we can keep moving on, just like we did before. The monarchy and its fall is another major theme in Hosea. Isn't this so helpful? Like, you just have these resources and you can just go through them and learn so much at one time. Having electronical resources is just so helpful. The fidelity of God, and that's the last one. Okay. That is our six major themes. We can go back and read these at another date. That's usually what happens, that you go back and you read them later. Problem raised by the study of Hosea. Okay, our study of Hosea has uncovered several problematic features that we need to address before moving on to Joel. The first, dealing with presentation of Israel as a harlot, invites attention from the perspective of ideological criticism. The second, dealing with the nature and severity of God's punishment of Israel, invites investigation of Hosea's view of God. The third, dealing with the allusion to the Exodus and Hosea 11, invites a look at how that text is used in the New Testament. Okay, this makes sense. We could probably look at this later, but this seems to be a lot of the same stuff that we looked at in Hosea, and I'm not really worried about the New Testament's use of the Old Testament as it pertains to Hosea 11, verse 1, although I will discuss that in my own class and in my own notes. All right, let's go back and look at our notes for Hosea and see what we're lacking. We have a date of composition. We had the historical circumstance, and in general, we already know that from Amos, the study in Amos. We've got an outline. We've got some key passages. Not that many, but we do have some key passages. Major and minor themes. We are filled to the brim. Major and minor themes. We've got New Testament citations left then. And modern day applications, that's usually the last step that you do in a study like this. You don't really want to start with modern day applications. You're crossing the river too quickly if you do that. You've got to cross the river when it's time to cross the river. That's the day. And to do that, you have to set up the basis of your study in actual exegesis and study. So yeah. Okay, let's go find Hosea on our list. We have 21 citations between the Old Testament and the New Testament. We're not really worried about the specifics of these or their order. We're just going to copy and paste them, because that is what we do, because we are coming back to look at all this later. And we are going to make them a little bit neat, though. Okay. So I believe in our yeah. I think we just do that, then delete the middle section. do that. I'll delete the middle section. Just like this, all the way down. And then when you finish this, you have a nice little organized list. What's going on, B Camp for Light? How you doing? Hopefully this is helpful to you. It's mainly helpful to me because I'm getting ready for my Bible class for the fall. But I'm thinking that as I read through these books and do these studies, that you might be able to pick up on some gems as we go through. And this study is going to get more and more complex as we move on to the future. Right now, we're just kind of making the outlines and kind of getting some basic ideas of what's going on. And in the future, we'll be able to bring all this together into a coherent outline. We'll make a handout. We'll make some more detailed, specific notes. And then, yeah, we'll be ready to teach the class come August. All right, we've already made it to Hebrews. We've already made it to Hebrews. Now we're in 1 Peter. As I'm going through these, if you can see these, this is a great resource. The Old Testament's, or the New Testament's use of the Old Testament. So anytime you can, you might pause and copy some of these down for yourself and do like a parallel study on them. Not all these are going to make much sense because it could just be a word that's the same between them or something like that. But much of it will be helpful, like Revelation 6:16 and Hosea 10 verse 8. Okay. This here looks pretty good. We got ourselves 1,300 words in a Hosea basic document, and then we're just going to build it up from there. So we've got Isaiah, we've got Hosea, we've got Amos. Who is next? Yeah, I think so too. The Old Testament is much needed. In fact, the Apostle Paul said himself, let's see, whatever was written in the former days was written for our instruction, so that by steadfastness and by the encouragement of the scriptures, we might have hope. We garner so much from studying the Old Testament. It's silly to throw it away. In fact, so much so that some prefer not to call it the Old Testament, but instead to call it the what am I even trying to say? Oh, they call it the Hebrew Scriptures. Yeah. Let me do this. Let's open up our Daniel outline for a second. Yeah, August 4th, October 27th. August 4 to October 27th. Now, that's actually 13 weeks and not 15. So we're going to delete probably 2 of these things. We'll probably take Hosea down. Hosea and Amos both down to 1 week, and then have it like that. Introduction: Hosea, Amos, Micah, Nehemiah, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, Joel, Obadiah, Jonah. So we're doing pre-exilic, and then we got, wait, what am I even talking about? Got kind of later, oops. You got kind of mid, and you got kind of early, and then you got your unknowns we're going to do at the end. So that should work. All right. So next week we're going to do Micah. Or not next week, whenever we do this. I don't know what the schedule is. The next time we're going to do Micah. We're going to grab the key passages, and then we're going to finish this whole section. Their message, the message for today, hope for the future, conclusion, etc. And we'll also look at this next time we get together. We're going to skip the Joel. We're going to skip the Amos since we've already looked at it. And then we're going to come all the way down to Micah, which seems to be 266 to 281, which seems to be a fairly short section. More prophets. Woohoo! Yeah, I know, Kiki. It's a lot of work. Let's show what I got so far, though, since I'm guessing you're just now joining us here. Hosea. So we finished our preliminary research on Hosea today. We got stuff on the data composition, about the audience, about the name of Hosea. We got good outlines, suggested outlines for Hosea, genres of literature in Hosea. We got the key passages in Hosea, kind of, sort of. We've got a whole bunch on the major and minor themes. We'll look at more of that later. And then the New Testament citations of Hosea. So we're moving along pretty good. Going to do Micah next. But as for now, I'm going to sign off because I am tired of looking at a computer screen. So I'm going to sign off for a bit and do a little bit of looking at a paper book because that's always fun. All right. I will see you all in the next live stream. We are getting ready for our fall Minor Prophets class.